Keyonte George is the rookie point guard who has now been thrust back into the starting role for the Utah Jazz. And to be quite honest, he actually hasn't been terrible since he got reinstated. Now, the first game was a rough one. He played off against Stephen Curry and the Warriors in a game where he was first facing off against Steph Curry ever. And things did not go well. Essentially, it devolved to Stephen Curry sees rookie, Stephen Curry fries rookie. But he learned from that. And today we're going to talk about those learnings that he's made, what we can expect from the rest of this season, and what the outlook on him going forward will be the remainder of this year. Thanks for tuning in this video. It's your boy Wraith Hoops. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications if you're a fan of the Utah Jazz. We do this almost every day. Let's go ahead and get into this one. Despite starting in the past few games for the Utah Jazz for the first time since he had a 16-game stint earlier on in the season, Keyonte George has been quite good at his job, more so on the offensive end, as defensively he's been struggling a bit, but he showed improvements in the most recent game against the Warriors that gives me promise towards his ability to improve in the future. It's important to go ahead and cover the numbers as they are, particularly from the past 3 games. Now, he started in 3 of them, as I said, and he played roughly 34.3 minutes in those games, with the high being 41 minutes in the rematch against the Warriors on the back end of a back-to-back. He averages 17 points across these 3 games in 34.3 minutes per game. He also averages 2.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.7 steals, and 2 turnovers to go along with shooting splits of 43.9% from the field and 48.1% from three-point range, and a 0.7 for 1 free throw rate, which gives him 66.7, but that's a very small sample size, so it doesn't really matter that much. If we are to compare those numbers to his overall 50-game sample size, in which obviously the other 47 games being the ones where he either was starting and wasn't performing well, or came off the bench and had some good games, but also had some really bad ones. In those games, he started across the entire season a total of 19 games. He's played in 50, bar the lower body extremity issue that he ended up having at one point because he hurt himself. He's been pretty healthy and pretty standard to go every single game. He's averaging 24.9 minutes per match, averaging 11.7 points in that time period, 2.8 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 0.5 steals, 0.1 blocks, and 2 turnovers to go along with shooting splits that are a little bit worse than we've seen over these past 3 games of 39.1% from the field and 34.8% from three-point range. He shoots a much more respectable and expected 81.8% from the free throw line, and that honestly has been the biggest thing that makes me hopeful for his ability to become a superb shooter in this league. It was revealed to us recently that his shooting splits off the dribble are significantly higher than off the catch, meaning that since most players struggle with dribbling and creating their own shots and perform better when they're being set up by other teammates, he has a much easier task to solve the problem, because being set up, that work's going to be done for him. Him just being able to align those spirals with his fingertips and let that thing fly is going to be the hard part, which quite frankly isn't that hard at all when he doesn't have to create the space and find the shot for himself. Overall, Keyonte George had a very interesting scouting report coming out of college, and honestly, his journey in college was just a little bit different than most people actually realize. Keyonte George in a recent interview said that he knows what he needs to do is just start stacking days and continue to do so. Understanding this goes back from the mentality that he had in college towards the end of his campaign when he played at Baylor. For those that didn't know, Keyonte George didn't run the point guard spot all the time at Baylor. He actually spent a significant amount of time in that small forward spot because he actually got beefed up to 230 pounds. Now, mind you, Keyonte is only 6'4", but him playing out of position like that was something that the team felt was necessary, and they felt like that was the best way to have him on the court and be effective for them. He actually lost a significant amount of weight going into his pro day after he got eliminated in the NCAA tournament that year very early on. And during that 2-month period of time where he had to get his body right and get his mind right, he did so. Mind you, if you go on any website right now, he's listed as being 185. And quite honestly, he doesn't look like he's any more than maybe 190, 195 if you really want to push that. I would argue that it makes more sense for him to be at that level and just need to work his way a little bit back up so that he can have some stronger finishes at the rim. But even then, he showcased a pretty strong floater game and the ability to absorb contact at the rim and still get a soft finish off. Early on in the season, he was struggling a bit, but again, with time and opportunity, comes results, and he has been showing them as of late, more specifically than at any other point in the season. Now, the biggest thing that concerns me individually about Keyonte George's game is the fact that more often than not, despite the fact that his scouting report said that he was a poor shot maker and highly turnover prone, which he does have a little bit of a turnover problem at times, he tends to find the right shots when he's on the court at the NBA level. He's also become a much more significantly improved passer these days and finds himself in a situation where he's only led by rookies by Scoot Henderson in the assist category, and he's right there neck and neck basically with Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, who also have a team high in assists. The thing about Keyonte George is going to be his consistency. Now, we've seen games like against Oklahoma City back in December when he gave them 30 points. He looked like a guy that could give you 20 to 24, 25-ish on a nightly basis in that game. But then he regressed, and a lot of times, particularly in January, you saw him show up as a guy that might be your 7th or 8th man off the bench. And while he did play a similar role in actuality, the limited number of opportunities that he's been on the court would have made you think that if he's going against second unit guys and third unit guys, he's going to have more of an opportunity to show out. And quite frankly, it didn't happen as much or as needed to as it often should have. But the corner turned, and here we are in February. And despite my initial dismay towards him starting in this season, because again, we thought that this team was going to be a playoff caliber team, more so for a play-in than actually vying for a championship, obviously. But Danny Ainge decided to make the correct decision and go ahead and slightly blow things up at the trade deadline and get some money and some opportunity from some of these contracts that were going to be expiring. So we do have a late first round pick, which is basically a second rounder in my eyes, and an actual second round pick now that got added in. Again, we did lose Fontecchio, we lost Olynyk, and we lost Abaji, but overall, it looks like things are going to be moving in a positive direction. But that all hinges on Walker Kessler's development, and I have that video linked here, as well as the rookies this year, Taylor Hendricks, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Keyonte George. Keyonte obviously has the most minutes at the NBA level. He's obviously the most polished game. Bryce does show his hand at being a guy that has a very sneaky knack to get to a bucket and do it very efficiently, which was a question with him coming out of college, just being able to previously shoot whatever shot he wanted at Ohio State. But now he's refined his game a little bit, still shooting really good shooting splits. His issue was going to be playmaking, which he has become a little bit more consistent on the positive end, still has his shaky days, but more importantly, his defense, because at times Keyonte George seems to be almost unplayable when his shot isn't falling because his defense is pretty poor unless you see him in a lineup alongside Chris Dunn. With that being the understanding, at the same time, you would like for him to go ahead and make those improvements earlier on in his career. And really, this 26 game sample size ahead of us is going to give him the proper amount of time that he needs to go ahead and show the management, show the coaching staff, and show the other players on his team exactly who he can potentially be for this franchise. Over Taylor Hendricks and over Bryce Sensabaugh, he is the guy that has had the most opportunity. He's had the largest sample size of shot attempts in every other statistical category and the opportunity to do so. And he has the most to prove during this 28 game sample size. Again, Taylor Hendricks is playing in the teens right now. I would like to see him play closer to 25 minutes on a nightly basis, just so we can get him those necessary reps and so he can show us how ready he is for the NBA level. Again, defensively, I think he's almost there. Offensively, he still needs a pretty decent amount of polish, even though he can shoot the three ball. His front-facing game isn't the greatest, and at times he struggles with knowing where he's supposed to be on the certain plays and just being on the court in general. That comes with time and opportunity, and that's his opportunity right now to go ahead and get some in. Keyonte George, however, has already had those growing pains. He's already been through it. His issue has always been he finds the right shots, but the right shots don't always fall for him. So it makes him look like he doesn't know what he's doing because his efficiency ends up being in the high 30s for field goal percentage and the lowish 30% for the three-point range. Now, he does shoot pretty decent from the three-point range, and over the past month and a half or so, his percentages have obviously gone up. Now, the more recent games have obviously skewed it in a positive direction, but we like when it's skewed that way because that means that he's getting hotter as the season goes on. And maybe he did deserve this opportunity, as Will Hardy said, and this wasn't a situation where you just want to throw the rookies out there and see what they have. But instead, it was an opportunity for him to go ahead and show them who he is as a player and who you can expect to show up next year and the year after that, and who he will be on the potential championship build team that they plan on putting together. Now, you have nights where he looks like he can be that superstar caliber guard that really can play make his behind off, show guys how to get to a bucket in the easiest way possible. and even at times has some pretty timely rebounds and attacks the glass with some tenacious ferocity. However, he also has the more so bench guy type of opportunities as well, where he's just come into games, he shot really poorly, and then defensively he also looks either lost or he just doesn't seem to be the most engaged. And that can be problematic because while he was not obviously picked the highest in the draft for this team, obviously that goes to Taylor Hendricks, Keyonte George is more so expected to be a guy that could potentially show them what they need from a guard, and they've been hunting for that. That's why he got the opportunity to start 16 games earlier on in the season. I think that he will make the strides necessary, and I think this is as good a time as any for him specifically. Lauri Markkanen's shooting percentages are struggling a little bit because he's trying to develop more of a dribble game for himself so he can create his own shot and not just rely on other people to set him up. At the same time, Keyonte George has to be able to match that level of effort and intensity and stack the days necessary to show these guys that he can potentially be the starting point guard for this championship contending team when they reach that time. If he does end up in a situation where over these next 26 games, he still remains super inconsistent and he has a lot more bad games than he has positive games, and you see him ending the season on this 26 to 28 game span, shooting 38% from the field and 32 to 34% from three, there might be a little bit more cause for concern there, because then he might be showing you that while he is a pretty solid piece, he's just nothing more than a role player. I would like to currently bet the over. I know I haven't been the highest on Keyonte George, but something about the way he's played the most recent games, and of course recency bias plays into it, he just seems to be more confident than ever in his ability to be successful, and particularly against the Warriors the second time around, I did not think he was going to grow as much as he did. In the first game, I watched him get rolled out there for 34 minutes and get absolutely demolished in every situation possible. I saw him being tired. I saw him being lethargic. I saw him not fighting through screens. I saw him not fighting over screens. I saw him allowing screeners to take him out of the play. And when you're guarding a prime player who is considered also to be the greatest shooter of all time in Stephen Curry, that's not something that can be allowed. And for Will Hardy to continually throw him out there like that, to me, that was wasted tape. But it looked like he just sat there after the game and put that tape on rewind. He watched the play, he played it back, he rewound it, he ran it back over and over and over. Because in that next game, we saw him play significantly better on defense. He was fighting through screens. He was getting handsy. He looked like he wanted it. It looked like you took Colin Sexton's mentality and threw it into his body, and then he was playing with the full ferocity of a bull. And while we didn't end up getting that win, losing 137 to 140 is crazy from a point differential standpoint, more so because it's so high and it feels like defense wasn't played to the highest degree. But more importantly than that, he was there in a lot of the plays. And while it wasn't a superb defensive standing from him, it was definitely night and day compared to what he played before. And so if he can take that growth and that knowledge that he can do in such a short period of time, and whoever assisted him in doing that, if they can continue to, I think he can make significant strides by the end of this season. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that Keyonte George's ceiling is a perennial all-star caliber player, or do you think he's just a role player or a starter at best? I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and become a member to get the videos faster than anybody else. As always, it's your boy Wraith Hoops, and as always, good morning, good evening, good night, no matter where you are on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.